Okay, great. Hey, so afternoon, everyone. Thank you ever so much for joining us. It's really kind of great kind of pleasure to be able to talk to you about our work today. So, welcome to the Immersive Promotion panel. The speakers today will be myself and Claire Skelcey, who will introduce herself shortly. So my name is Matthew Freeman. I'm a reader in multi-platform media at Bath University and one of the former co-Is, but also research leads on Bristol and Bath creative R&D. So I am a white male, mid-30s, with stubble, black rimmed glasses, wearing a dark blue jumper and located in a grey bedroom. So just to give a very actually before I start, just to introduce our interpreters for the session. So big thank you to David and Sarah. David Wolfenson, we joined our sign language interpreters. So David's pronouns are he/him. He's a white middle-aged man wearing an open collared shirt. And he's set in front of a blue background, and also Sarah anchors. So Sarah's pronouns are she, her, and she's a white woman in her early 40s. Is wearing a black top, her hair is short and red, and is sitting in front of a white wall. So just to give a very, very brief introduction to the panel. So as I mentioned, it's myself and Claire, and we're really going to be talking about the question of marketing and communications and promotions for immersive technologies and experiences. There's kind of two parallel pieces of work that have been going on across the Pathfinder, intersected in some ways, but also different projects coming at it from a slightly different perspective in others. So we're really interested in how do we communicate what XR is and how can we utilize it more creatively within our communication and marketing. So I will come at this from the perspective of how do we communicate actually what immersive experiences are and the value and the meaning of them to people who haven't perhaps experienced them much or even personally know what they are. If you've not put on a VR headset, for example, how can we better do a job of communicating what that experience is and hopefully broadening the audience for this kind of work. And then following on from this, Claire will talk to you about her amazing project through Raucous, which thinks about how can we better integrate AR technology into our marketing and communication. Okay, so I'll kick this off. Just bear with me whilst I share slides. Cool. Hopefully everyone can hear. So yeah. So as I say, I'll be talking just a bit about the project that I've kind of been leading on, which is very much a collaborative project as well, which is really I think quite lofty ambitions. I guess in terms of thinking about how do we broaden the audience for immersive experiences, and I guess partly this is about trying to change kind of cultural perceptions on a sort of mass market level in terms of what people think immersive or what people think XR is, and to do this really through marketing and promotion strategies. So trying to develop a new promotional language, you might say, for communicating VR and AR. So what I'll do is just pick out just a very small number of kind of key lessons and some audience insights and show you a few examples of some of the work that we've been doing, which now informs our commercial consultancy work, which we now do as immersive promotion design. So this is a research project that has now informed a new business. So this is a new marketing company that's specifically for the world of XR and communicating this, which is based at Bath University. So just to kick things off, I'll just show you our short promo video, which just which shows a little bit more about kind of who we are and the work that we do.
We are
Sorry.
Immersive Promotion Design, a new breed of consultancy for the XR sector. There's no doubt that the time for immersive technology has come, but the reality is that XR remains difficult to communicate to those who haven't experienced it before. Working to establish a whole new promotional language for marketing virtual, augmented, and mixed reality experiences, we provide audience insight and onboarding, strategy and concept development, and production of promotional assets, whatever your XR project. We are a collective of immersive thought leaders, made up of arts and cultural marketeers, creative producers, researchers and academics, brand and story strategists, creative technologists, digital theatre makers and artists. Spanning both industry and academia, we proudly bring together insights from Vatstar University, the BBC VR Hub, Limina Immersive, Story Central Limited, Passport, Raucous and beyond. How, though, can the magic of your 3D XR worlds be more effectively communicated via 2D media? Emphasising not the newness of the technology, but the transformation of your audience's state of mind, our work is all based on research-informed and audience-tested principles. Thanks to grants from Story Futures Academy and Bristol and Bath Creative R&D, we have led on the marketing for cutting-edge XR projects, in which we form new promotional strategies, Bibles, toolkits, campaigns, and course materials. We now support XR creatives and businesses from different corners of the XR landscape to better communicate with their audiences about the magic of immersive content.
Cool. So that, I think, hopefully gives a sense of some of the challenges, right? And hopefully the challenge here is clear, right? So, you know, the immersive sector is growing at a fast rate in some kind of areas and sectors more than others, but yet, you know, mass market adoption still remains comparatively low. I would argue that the reason for this is partly to do with marketing, or dare I say bad kind of marketing. You know, research tells us that many audiences for VR, let's say, still associate it with kind of very alien, far off technology. And I think, you know, the cultural perception for that kind of makes sense, given that so much of the sort of stock imagery and promotional images that are typically used to explain what these technologies are quite often, you know, guys in headsets or people pointing at mobile phones, which doesn't really kind of get across the value or even actually what this technology is. So I would argue that the immersive sector kind of needs a new way of communicating what these experiences actually are, one that sort of truly reflects actually the kind of experience that you're going to have, your role, your expectations for it, and indeed actually partly basing this on how audiences value these technologies, what's unique about them. So the project I did last year, with this part in particular, was funded by Story Futures, tried to at least sort of make a start on this idea of a kind of new promotional language. So we worked with 3 XR partners, all very different, and essentially kind of produced a research-informed and audience-tested marketing campaign for each of them. So the 3 being Anagram's Goliath, which is a VR documentary about living with schizophrenia, which is forthcoming on Oculus in the summer. Studio Maguire's The Invited, which is an AR pop-up Kirigami adaptation of the Dracula story, also forthcoming. And the National Gallery's Virtual Veronese, which is a VR art exhibition that transports its visitors back to the 16th century. So let me just, as I say, kind of just pull out kind of a handful of key lessons, if you like, in terms of sort of what we learned by trying to do some of this work and promote XR to people who hadn't experienced it before. So lesson 1 really was promote emotions, not technologies. So a lot of the audience insights that we did that kind of informed this work really sort of showed us that we kind of need to base this on actually what XR is. And I know that sounds really kind of obvious, but you know, most of the time the approach here is to focus on the technology and the headsets and the gizmos and the sexiness, right? Whereas actually we found that actually it's much more based on the human side and the experience and the emotion that is that's most important. And in terms of sort of audience insight, we kind of argue that actually we can distill XR down to kind of 3 promises that it makes to audiences. So some combination of the bit at the top. So a new way of seeing the world, a new way of connecting with people, or simply a really profound personal experience. Again, also based on audience insight, we kind of found that actually what people value most about XR as an experience is always the emotional side. It's always how it feels, and specifically that it feels real, that it offers a particular form of engagement, and that if it's managed well, it can also make you feel safe and secure. Then what we did was sort of just through research kind of identify particular sort of characteristics that actually make up an XR experience, again, in terms of how audiences value it. So things like scale and space, that's, you know, that sense of like that uncanny sense of vastness within a VR space, the proximity, the ability to like almost move up to something and touch it, the 360 nature of the sound, the ability to kind of roam and be free within these spaces, and so on. So basically the thinking here is that XR itself remains difficult to communicate if you haven't experienced it before, but what we can do is break it down in terms of its characteristics, its affordances, and importantly how audiences value it, and then find ways of communicating those things a bit more strategically. So this is just some of the kind of example imagery that we mocked up for the three projects that I mentioned, and you know this is based on some of these ideas of immersive proximity or scale and space. And the images you can see here kind of generally tested best on audiences new to these sorts of experiences. So how do we do this? So lesson 2, promote XR as magic, not science fiction. So, you know, we're all familiar with the very famous, iconic Arthur C. Clarke quote from 1962 that goes, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." And in 2020, a Nielsen survey found that people are most interested in using XR technologies if they enhance their everyday lives in a very practical, meaningful sense. So in other words, we kind of need to reposition XR culturally, not as science fiction, which I think is how it's typically promoted, but instead as the kind of magical counterpart to our very ordinary, everyday, daily lives. So in other words, it's Harry Potter, it's not Star Trek. And here's just an example, a few examples actually. So this was a kind of poster image for the National Gallery that we made, and this proved most popular with audiences in terms of communicating Virtual Veronese as being a VR exhibition, and actually doing hopefully quite an effective job of showing that this is a VR exhibition without putting people in headsets, but totally inspired, as you can see, by this kind of almost Harry Potter style logic of kind of magical portals into impossible worlds. This was another one. This was for the AR Dracula experience, The Invited, which is, you know, as you can see, just a fairly simple animated poster, but it was kind of the result of quite a bit of sort of audience testing. So we found that, you know, utilizing things like filters and animation was a very simple way of communicating AR, but also screen media, which was important to us. But when we tested it, this generally appealed to younger men. The image on the right, which was sort of inspired by kind of the world of immersive theatre and escape rooms, which is also important in immersive terms. And it was kind of based on these ideas of like proximity and scale and space that I mentioned, was a way of communicating that. But it generally, on the opposite side, it tended to appeal to older women. So essentially what we did was we kind of put these things together and kind of retested it and repackaged it. And this particular image had a 20% click rate when it was put out as a sponsored ad. But most importantly, the audience was very diverse. So it was people were clicking on this almost equally, all the way from 16 going right the way up to 65 plus. So taking a much more kind of artful but kind of mixed methods approach seemed to be a key kind of lesson there for us. The final lesson, keep audiences immersed for longer. So this was kind of my sort of personal favorite learning, I think, a little bit. So when marketing VR in particular, we found that promotional material that is specifically designed to try and recapture the emotional experience of what it's like to be immersed was very successful in terms of building new audiences, almost in a kind of word of mouth type approach. So we created a lot of what we called post-experience mementos that were trying to kind of bottle people's mood change effectively and rekindle the memory that people had of what it was like to be within an immersive experience, and try to recapture that outside of that experience itself, but allow people to go back into it, as it were. So it's all about kind of harnessing, as I said, the change in mood and memory that XR is known to be capable of having on a kind of emotional, psychological level, and thinking about that as a form of marketing, essentially. So for example, we built a couple of filters for Goliath and the Invited. So in the case of Goliath, which is the one on the left, this filter became a kind of form of ambassador marketing to build awareness for the actual VR experience itself. And the experiment was here was to kind of allow people to go into the VR world, but just to do it through your phone, and almost to try and normalize the act of wearing a VR headset, given that we know so many reservations are of, you know, what it's going to be like to be wearing something like this. So the idea was that Anagram's audiences could kind of post selfies, they could share, you know, they could share this across their social channels with their friends. So in other words, it's AR as a kind of promotional bridge to VR. But it's also AR as a way of extending the experience of XR into much more normal, familiar, everyday activity in a way that absolutely captures the magic of these experiences. And so by adopting kind of some of these approaches, which we kind of describe as altogether about emphasizing the newness, not emphasizing the newness of the technology, but rather the transformation of your audience's state of mind. We found that altogether across all of the projects and the audience testing that we did for these campaigns, the work that we did proved to boost interest and engagement amongst those who had never experienced VR or AR before by anything between 40 and 78%, give or take, across the different projects, which was really fascinating and encouraging to see. Great. So I'll leave it there. I'll hand over to Claire. Just the other quick thing to mention is if there's any questions, do feel free to pop them into the chat, and we'll try and get to those at the end of the panel. So thanks very much for listening.
Hi everyone, and thanks Matt, that was brilliant, thank you. So hi everyone, my name is Claire Skelcey, as already introduced by Matt very kindly. I'm one of the creative team for Raucous, and I'm here today to sort of follow on from Matt's presentation and talk about a more specific prototype that we've actually been building in order to promote an immersive experience. So like Matt, I'm just going to share my slides, so just give me 1 second. Okay, so just to let you know a little bit about me, my name's Claire Skelcey. I'm a 45-year-old white female. I'm wearing a black dress and I have blonde shoulder-length hair. I'm sat in a room that has 2 different colours on the wall. I've got blue at the bottom and white at the top, and then there's a wooden wardrobe behind me. I can smell coffee, just to add another layer. So yes, I'm here from Raucous. We make immersive theatre, whereby we hope that the audience is very much immersed in the story so that all of their senses are ignited. So that's sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. I'm not sure if we've actually managed to taste yet, but that's something that we're definitely going to bring into it. But what we really hope to achieve is that the senses are awoken through traditional theatre, so acting, and of course a play, but also using things like lighting, film, projection mapping, AR, and other sort of technologies that we can bring in to make the story even more alive. We've made a couple of shows which have been really rather epic productions so far. In 2015, we made The Stick House by Sharon Clark, which took place in the tunnels underneath Temple Meads. This is an image from that show. And then in 2017, we made Ice Road, which took place at Jacobs Wells Baths, which is the disused Victorian swimming baths over in Hot Wales. We like to use found spaces because we believe that it's even more immersive and sort of exciting and reveals sort of new emotion in you if you sort of enter into a space where you don't know what you're going to expect, as opposed to if you walk into a traditional theatre. So yeah, using disused spaces is something that Raucous is really, really keen on. We also absolutely love to start the story before the time that you would expect it to. So with The Stick House, you were given something that you wore around your neck before the play started. And at Ice Road, the play started in the bar. And so over at Raucous, we started to think, why don't we start the story even earlier? Why don't we start the story in the marketing? So in many ways, the marketing is no longer marketing. It's just part of the experience. And yes, of course, it also needs to be a tool to sell tickets. But that was what we decided to explore with this project. So lucky for us, thank you very much indeed, we got funded to produce this prototype through the Expanded Performance Fund. And we really wanted to sort of focus on how we could use AR in order to draw the audience in really early. Now, the original idea was to create a beautiful poster that went up at Bristol Temple Meads train station. And it's that one that's under the underpass. I don't know if you know it, that kind of everyone wants to book because it's the one that you see just before you go up the stairs. And what the idea was that we'd have a beautiful poster there that would somehow either trigger or tell you to use your phone and then hold your phone up against that poster, and then AR would be triggered. And then perhaps one of our characters would come out to you and try and sort of, you know, tell you to buy a ticket, or just start the story there and really kind of involve you in what it is that we're actually trying to do with the show that you might then expect to see a few months later. Of course, we couldn't do the show there because COVID hit and, well, people weren't going anywhere. And of course, it wasn't really the time to be trying to gather people in one place to view something. And so we decided to build a flyer. And actually, a flyer is a really perfect thing for times in COVID because it means it can be delivered to your door, which of course is what we really need in these times when people just, they need to do things at home because of lockdown. And also people might not necessarily be feeling like they want to go out. It also meant that we could really personalize it. And it's shareable, so you can then show it to your family or you can show it to your street and see what they think of it. Also, another really important thing is that it's tactile. We like things to feel good with Raucous. We like you to be able to touch things, whether it's you know, something that you might hold in the middle of a show, or whether it's a flyer that you open rather than something that you just look at. So that was really important to us. And then this is just a simple prototype this time. So as you can see on the front of this flyer, there's a QR code. Then the back of the flyer, this has beautiful copy on it. So it very much brings you into the world of Raucous because we do love to use beautiful words in order to tell our stories. And of course, Sharon Clark is a phenomenal playwright, so she can do that so easily. It also has instructions on it, hopefully not too sort of obvious, although we may need to test whether it needs to be more obvious, but they tell you to hold your phone in order to open it up. The story starts here, so we can introduce you to the actual characters who are going to be in the show, as opposed to just using marketing copy, which is what might normally go on a flyer. And it builds intrigue. So this would basically be delivered through your door, and then hopefully you would know that the thing that you needed to do is hold your phone up against it, and then AR would be triggered. So here's a picture. This is actually from another project that we did called The Foundling, which is another prototype whereby you get lots of different parcels delivered to your door, and then that builds a story. That's for another presentation, and Sharon's already done a talk about that, so that might be worth finding. But I'm just going to show you here. This is literally a screen grab of someone sort of testing it. So unfortunately, you can't hear the sound on this, but hopefully it will still come across. So I'll just show you this. So this is what you would see when you held your phone over the AR. And there's a really beautiful sound when that hazelnut pops up. I haven't said, this very much is a sort of work in progress at the moment that we're making with the brilliant Studio Giggle. So huge thanks to them. But yeah, so they've designed this flyer and they've also done the AR. And we're just developing it at the moment. It's not quite ready yet. If it is, and when it is, I'll let you know so that you can test if you'd like to. So just to go back. So the idea is that we would test this on audiences, and we will test this on audiences, and we'll find out what they like. Like, do they even enjoy this kind of interaction with marketing? Do they feel like it is for them? Is it designed for them? Do they have the right technology? And then if they do, how long do they stay on for? Do they watch it multiple times? Do they know that they can watch it from different angles? Do they share it with people? But actually, what Matt said earlier is absolutely, completely how we feel about this. It's about sparking an emotion in someone so that they are compelled to sort of follow the story through and keep going with this thing that we have created for them. So the future for me, in terms of Raucous and what we're trying to achieve, this is just a small thing that we're trying to do. Really, I want all of our marketing to be sort of experiential storytelling. So it's sort of not really marketing anymore in such a way that it could be that, say, actually, the way that we market a show might be that a choir performance crosses into an AR poster that then crosses into the theatre show, but then that comes even back further into interactive gaming. And the whole thing is an experience, but without the sort of traditional forms of marketing. I know that you still need to promote things and that traditional forms of marketing will never really go away, but that the key way that Raucous does it is through these ways. And thank you. I've just realized the time, so I'm going to be quick. Thank you very much. You can check us out at raucous.org.uk. I want to say thank you very much to Sarah and David for the sign interpreting. And thank you very much. Any questions? And I'm sorry I had to rush a bit there at the end. I'll just...
Thanks. That was fantastic. Thank you, Claire. Yeah, no, I would just like to reiterate thank you to Sarah and David. I can't see any questions actually in the chat, so I think we're fine in terms of time. Yeah, absolutely. Same with myself. If you'd like to get in touch, we're immersivepromotion.com. I'd love to kind of continue the conversation in terms of exploring this kind of question further. So again, thank you ever so much for joining the panel. I hope that was as interesting for you as it certainly was for me, and hope to keep talking. Speak soon. Thank you again.